husband uses this computer too, and so it gets all sorts of confusing.
Is he a student as well?
No, he's not, but he uses it for work every once in a while. Not very often, but sometimes. Okay, there's my outline. Okay, so how's your project? Do you have any, like, do you want to talk about projects first? Do you want to get right into the outline?
Do you want to, I don't know if I really have any questions or anything about it, but did you want the two of us to maybe get together to do our 15 to 20 minute teaching thing, or were you just going to do that?
Yeah, I haven't found anyone to do it with yet. I haven't even, not that far in. I'm so behind. It's just mentally everything.
I am too. I have not yet turned in my lesson plan outline that was due last week.
Yeah, I wasn't going to turn it in either because it wasn't done, and I emailed and I said, is it better to turn this in or hang on to it? I'm like, I'm going to get a resubmit or an M- anyway because it's not complete. I said, at least turn it in because then I can look over it and give you some pointers. But I think 1 week to do all that research, and then, I mean, you kind of had to do research beforehand for the literature review. But there, once I started the outline, or I mean my lesson plan, I realized there's a lot more research I need to do. Like I wasn't.
Well, and that's one of the things I was confused about that she clarified for me when I was talking with her the other night, was that our literature review outline, which I thought is what we were supposed to base our lesson plans on, is not the case at all. She said they're two separate things. And the points that we'll hit in our lesson plans will be a lot fewer points and maybe some different points than what we had in our literature review. And I was like, okay.
That doesn't make any sense.
It kind of didn't, but at the same time, I was relieved because I have 5 major points on my literature review with sub points underneath of those, And I'm going, this is going to be hours long, this workshop is. But then she's like, no, just pick a few of those or a few things that base off of those, some of the sub points or whatever, to do your workshop, your lesson plan on.
I guess I didn't expect to use every single thing I reviewed on my literature review. But I just assumed that would be kind of the basis. Like, why find articles or whatever and read through them and write a review and then not use them?
Yeah.
Whatever. I use some of them. I found new stuff too, so it doesn't really matter.
The literature reviews are so long and so time consuming. And I know in one of my classes a few semesters back, we did a brief thing 1 week on how to skim through literature reviews to get what you need out of it, but I don't remember what those things were.
This was my first experience with a literature review, and I didn't think it was that difficult, but I felt like it was a lot of work. Like, I would read the abstract and be like, okay, this doesn't apply, or it does, and then I usually just would find where it talked about what I needed, but still it was just like, how many times am I supposed to be able to do this? I'm kind of struggling with my workshop just in having the vision of what I want it to be like. It's like I will start researching and reading things. I'm like, oh, I want to add that. Oh, I want to add that. And then next thing I know, I have all of these different ideas just bubbling around in my mind. And I went to do the literature review and I just felt totally lost. Like, do I add that? Do I take that out? Do I I can't get a flow, is what I kept calling it, a flow to my workshop and my lesson plan, moving from one idea to the next.
I'm struggling a little bit with that as well. Yeah.
And I just try to imagine myself up in front of this audience, speaking, and it's how do I want to transition? I think that's right now I feel like I have plenty of things to talk about. It's just figuring out the right transition between topic to topic to topic. So it just kind of, and you try to predict what they're going to say and have ideas to what responses to those, what they might ask, or other ideas. And it's when it was this is due in a week, I'm I am not going to be able to do this in a week. So I think that's the only thing I had a hard time with. I finally figured out how to research articles successfully. It took me a long time. And I've done it before, but I haven't had to have them so many on certain ideas, I think is what made it really hard. Before, when I've looked up topics, it's I need a few articles about this, and then I need a few articles about this way other topic, and then put them together. But this is just all one thing. So.
Yeah. Yep, it's definitely a learning experience. So.
Yep. All right. Well, is there anything from your outline, the reflective questions, that you wanted to talk about? If there was something that you really enjoyed?
Not necessarily in the questions, but there was just a few things that I came across in the readings that just kind of caught my attention more than others. And for the chapter for this week, I read the one on parenting education.
Oh, cool. I didn't read that one, so I'm glad you read it.
Oh, which one did you read?
I did the Bettering Yourself one, chapter 8.
Oh, okay. Okay, well, I'm glad we did different ones.
Yeah, me too.
I'm just trying to get all this information, and I really want to be a family life educator, and so I'm like, what if I just don't know what I'm talking about and I sound like an idiot? And so I just have all these concerns of not being successful, I guess.
Yeah. Oh no, that's the same. Yeah.
But reading in over in the teaching the gospel reading, whatever it was called.
Yeah.
There's some things that kind of caught my attention too, and I can see myself applying those things to my primary class, and I hadn't really thought about them in any other way. And there was, let me see if I can find which page it was on. There's simple things like, plan the discussion. Well, obviously primary kids are going to want you to plan the discussion. I guess this could be applied to any class in the church, but I teach primary now. So, yeah. But, plan the discussion. You've got to have, points that you want to hit and ideas of how the kids are going to answer that and how you can play off their answers to create a meaningful discussion. And there's some other things. Oh, where's it at? Oh, sorry. I have them highlighted, but I don't have them. I should have copied and pasted them somewhere. Effective teaching is edifying teaching, and people are more likely to be edified when they participate in learning under the influence of the Spirit. And I think, even outside of the gospel, that if we prepare ourselves with the foundational knowledge we need to do the things that we need, and we prepare ourselves the best that we can, then we'll be able to present our workshops in a way that will not only be beneficial to those that are participating in the workshop, but we will also, as the presenter, be able to learn and grow. And I forgot, anyway, my train of thought went from that sentence, but I'll stop that sentence right there, I guess. But in the parenting education, it says it is unlikely to be optimally effective unless it is delivered by a competent parent educator. And I said, I want to be that competent parent educator. I want to know what I'm talking about. I want to be able to, if parents have questions or they answer a question I ask in a certain way, I want to be able to smoothly lead the discussion where it needs to go for the benefit of them and the rest of the people in the group. And I just have these fears that I'm not going to be able to do that. And then I keep telling myself and reminding myself about the readings and teaching the gospel handbook, and I'm like, well, if I prepare and do what I can, the Savior's going to make up the difference, and he's going to help me to accomplish my goals. So
yeah,
I don't know. I have this battle in my mind, I'm going to be terrible at doing what I want to do. And then I'm like, well, no, if I prepare well, I'll be able to accomplish it. I'll do my part, the Lord will fill in the rest.
Yeah. I think that has a lot to do with in chapter 5, of our reading, Engaging the Audience, it talks about the formula for engaging an audience. And, it had the three elements which are relevance, respect, and participation. And I think that has a lot to do with what you were just talking about being prepared to know the discussion. Something that I really liked from that was the part about respect. Because I'm very nervous because it keeps talking about for our project how we need to know our audience and we need to be able to engage with them. And it's like, even though my audience is going to be women from kind of my area, so I can kind of predict what they're going to say or be like, I'm really nervous that I'm not going to be prepared for some of their life stories that might come up or some of their issues. And so in here it said that we must model the respect that we invite participants to take to their family relationships. And I feel like part of that respect entails being prepared, respecting them enough to come prepared and come ready to teach and to listen, There was something else that I wanted. Oh, okay. And then in chapter 6 or 7, I think 6, it talks about the diversity of learning styles. And it was saying that, so this is a quote from page 125. Any attempt to reduce a group of people to a few descriptors is certain to leave us unprepared to appreciate the rich diversity within the group. When attempts to describe a group of people cause us to be categorical and prejudiced, they are counterproductive. When attempts to describe a group of people cause us to be humble and appreciative, they prepare us for mutual learning. So I really liked that because I think often with this whole, be prepared and be ready to talk to your group and know your group and know what they're like and try to predict what they're going to say or need. I kind of think that I often start to group them. They're all women. They're all going to be about this age. And it takes away that individuality and the personal stories and experiences they've all had. And so I think that, I don't know, I thought that related to kind of like what you were talking about being prepared and just to trust that the Lord will support us as we're trying to teach and guide these people. Because, obviously he knows them better than we could ever attempt to know them.
Right.
So, but I really liked that part. There was also another quote I really liked that said, the great danger, this is on page 125 as well, the great danger of generalizations is that they may mask the great individual variation within the group. So I really like that. That's true. Yeah. And then switching gears. So I read chapter 8, which is Education for Personal Well-Being, because I'm going to do my workshop on stress and mindfulness. So it's more of an individual kind of for the individual. And in here on page 145, it talks about David Myers has this, I don't know, it's not really a theory, but he calls it the American paradox. And he says, despite real incomes that have doubled in the past 40 years, we have less happiness, more depression, more fragile relationships, less communal commitment, less vocational security, more crime, and more demoralized children. In an age of plenty, we suffer pangs of purposelessness. And he talks in here, they talk a lot about how creating a meaningful life and a life with purpose is what makes people happy. And they use the word savoring, which I really like. They talk about how we need to savor our lives and savor our experiences. So not just let them pass. And it talks about how we need to savor the present, the past, and the future. And it talks about ways to do that. Anyway, I just really liked, because we've been talking, for the last 2 years about the family, family systems, family theories, and very little time has been spent on the individual, because it's, even when an individual acts up, we look at the family, Right. And so this chapter really just spoke about an individual. And it says that each of us makes choices that increase or diminish our well-being. We are not corks on a hostile sea. We may navigate our way to the port that suits us. But anyway, and even though it makes a big point too, that even though it's talking about the individual, it talked a lot about how the self-esteem movement was not a good way to teach people to be happy. They thought that if they, focused on themselves and taught people to love themselves, that it would increase happiness. But in reality, it's been a huge cause for a decrease in happiness. I had heard that before, but to read it again, it's people are now children and, well, not really kids anymore because they're kind of going away from the self-esteem thing, but it's gratitude and service that creates meaningful and experiencing and conquering new experiences, not just worrying about your happiness level right now,
Yeah. That's when people get stuck on their happiness level. That's why people with depression, they just sink lower and lower. It's because they're just thinking about them and, their feelings of their inadequacies or whatever it is. And they just sink lower and lower. But I think that if they were to find a way to serve others, even in the smallest way, start out with things small that they and build upon those, then they will be able to climb out. I mean, I'm not saying depression's not a real thing. I'm on antidepressants myself, but I just think that if we don't focus on ourselves and find others who need help, we can do better.
Yep. It talks about that a little bit in this chapter too. I wish that I would have read this chapter a long time ago. It talks about.
I wish I would have read this whole book a long time ago. I really love this book.
I know. It would have been really helpful to have read this earlier on. I'm trying to find, I know it talks about service and the way that can bring happiness to our lives. But another thing I really liked is that it talked a lot about showing gratitude. It talked about being grateful for the things you have, the things you have been given. Even if you savor the past, you can look on past experiences that were negative at the time and change them in your mind you don't have to lie about what happened, but to find the things that were good, to learn to be grateful for those experiences. And it talks about one way to serve that is super beneficial for you and the person you're serving is to write a gratitude letter. So just think of someone in your life that has inspired you or influenced you for the better and helped shape you into somebody you wanted to be, and to write them a heartfelt letter. And then instead of just sending it to them, to call them and organize either a person meeting or a video over the phone or computer and read your letter to them. And it was talking a lot about how, it's right here. Gratitude letters can enrich the lives of the giver and the recipient. The person to whom we read is likely to be overwhelmed with our expression of gratitude, and we will be filled with a sense that our lives are blessed. So that was really cool.
Yeah.
Anyway, but yeah, I enjoyed talking about the individual for a moment. Like I explained in the beginning, just to give me a perspective that even though this audience, are preparing for this lecture or this workshop, I mean, to a group of women or men or whatever, in my case, it's probably going to be just women, and to try not to generalize them as each being the same, but to realize that they are part of a family, but they are themselves too, And in here I actually had a quote, I'm sure I highlighted it, but I'm not really sure, that happy people make better family members.
It's true.
It's important to focus on the person. So, right here it says, the happiest people devote more time to family and friends, express more gratitude, offer more help to others, practice optimism, get more exercise, have lifelong goals, and cope better with stress. So anyway, I really, really, really appreciated this chapter 8 of this book. It was very enlightening.
It was hard for me to choose which one I was going to read. And then I was like, well, since I'm doing my workshop on with the parenting type angle, I'll read that chapter.
Yeah, that's why I chose the self, because I'm like, well, I'm kind of talking to the individual, I guess. Like, obviously I'm going to kind of relate it to how stress can impact our families, but it's mostly about how to handle and cope with our own stress. So seeing what else I wrote on my outline that I enjoyed. Oh yeah. So, what chapter? I don't remember what chapter it was from. I wonder if I put it down. I didn't. Probably chapter 6. The part in chapter 6 that talks about storytelling.
Oh, uh-huh.
I can never remember what class I learned stuff from. It might have even been this class. But I was told once, and this is just one of those things that stuck with me, that they did, they being, I don't know, a group of like university people, like smart people, I don't know who they were, did a study about storytelling. Have you heard this? Where they did an MRI of someone. So she was in the MRI scanner, and they told a story and they mapped their brain waves. And then they mapped the brain waves of the storyteller telling the same story. So then the storyteller went in the MRI machine and they did and the storyteller's brainwaves and the listener's brainwaves matched when the story was being told. So they were the same. Mm-hmm. And they did the same test where the storyteller told the same story, but in a different language that the listener didn't speak, and the brainwaves didn't match.
Really?
So, yeah. So they learned that when a story is being told, that the brainwaves match. Like, so we are connecting as people to one another when we use stories to express feelings, experiences, whatever it is. And that is just something that's really stuck to me because Jesus Christ taught all the time with stories. And it's always been, we always talk about how he just was trying to make it so that the people, the cultures he was speaking to could understand, because he would relate it right to their lives, which is something we're supposed to do too with our family workshops. But then I learned that, and I think even beyond that, he knew that that was a way for him to connect with his disciples or the people he was teaching, the non-believers, but it would match their brainwaves to one another. And so that's just been like a really big impact on my life. And so I really liked the part in I'm pretty sure it was chapter 6, where they talk, chapter 6 starts on page 109, where it talks about using personal stories and personal narratives, because I kind of developed a testimony, and surprisingly, I've always enjoyed stories, of how like beneficial that can be in teaching what we're trying to teach. It can literally connect us to our audience. You know what I mean?
Yeah. And I know for me, that's one of the best ways for me to learn is from hearing other people's experiences, or even reflecting on my own experiences and, what I gained from them. Yeah.
Yep. Anyway, so that was very, I don't know. I get the goosebumps whenever I tell that, that I wish I need to find the real article so I can have a little bit more validity in my story when I'm like, these one people somewhere at some place did this study. But I know it was backed up because I was in a class. I wish I would have printed out the article or whatever it was so I had it. But that's greatly impacted my life. And so I've been struggling though, because obviously we all have stress. Like that's the topic, is stress and mindfulness. Like, I experience stress on a daily basis, but when it comes down to like finding a specific story to share with my group, in this workshop, what do I pick that's not too private, not too personal?
Right.
Anyway, sorry, the husband he keeps calling me and then he's texting he needs something. So anyway, I really liked this part of chapter 6 we talks about, because it just kind of solidified what I'd already learned previously about telling stories. I also heard somewhere that at any given time, like when you're giving a talk or a speech, at one given moment, only 30% of your audience is actually listening.
Oh, wow.
And so I've been thinking a lot about that too. And, we've learned multiple times throughout my schooling so far about the power of stories, and that like captures people's attention for a lot longer. And like you were saying, it's easier to learn through a story. So I just really want my workshop to be filled with stories, either mine or the audience's. But I'm so nervous that because the topic is stress, that very personal things are going to come out, because you always have a couple people in the audience that share too much, or just experiences that are way too personal. So I'm so nervous, like, to be able to find that balance between using them to teach, but also not having them destroy my workshop. So anyway, like you were saying, I feel a little bit insecure, I think, generally speaking, about teaching this, because it's supposed to just encapsulate everything we've learned so far, and I don't know if I'm ready.
Right.
If I'm qualified.
Yeah. I've got all the skills I need to have.
Yeah. I just keep thinking there's going to be that one question I don't have the answer for, and I'm just going to be stumped. And I'm like, I can't remember.
Yeah. Teaching this again next week. I'll try to find info.
Yeah, exactly.
What do you say?
Exactly.
I don't know. Yeah.
Trying to see if there's anything else on my outline. Oh yeah, so it asked on there for the reflective questions, it asked what your personal weakness was. And I was like, only one, or can I? That is not a good question to ask when I already feel super overwhelmed and unprepared.
Yeah. Yeah. I have this problem when I talk that I don't know. Sometimes my mouth and my tongue don't cooperate together, and it ends up blah, 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 blah. So then I gotta and then slow down, and I'm like, I really, really, really hope I don't look or sound like an idiot.
Yeah. I think for me too, like just part of feeling unqualified and unprepared, I think also my ward is like a lot of older families. So I mean, not really, there's quite a few elderly people, but for the most part, it's families with their youngest is like 8 or 9 or 10. And so I'm like one of the youngest members of our ward, and I intend to teach it at the Relief Society meeting as like an activity. And I'm just like, I'm like the youngest person trying to talk to all these people who I'm sure have experienced far more stress and, you know, than I have because they've lived longer.
Yeah.
It's like, I don't know.
But they haven't learned. You took that stress and coping class?
Yeah, I did. I loved it.
That was really good. Yeah. I mean, there's a lot of skills there. It's like, man, I wish I would have known these years ago, you know, and it's not too late for them to learn and incorporate some of those skills.
Yeah. I know. I'm right now, I'm just going to teach mindfulness. You know, talk about stress for half and then mindfulness for half. I'm going to do 2 classes that are 2 hours long. But I'm really starting to consider including other coping styles, you know. I just knew with mindfulness it was something that I could teach them right there and have them practice right there and immediately feel the effects of. Whereas like the ABCX model is more of just like how to categorize your stress, you know, that takes a lot more practice, I think, and whereas mindfulness is just encompassing being happy, really. I mean, you don't even have to do it when you're stressed. Just be in the moment. I don't know. I've thought
it'll come together.
I know. I keep thinking that, and I just keep waiting for it just to like start clicking like Legos and putting it all together. But well, was there anything else that you wanted to talk about, or anything else on your outline, or?
I don't think so. No.
I feel like I've talked a lot today. I didn't mean to.
Oh, no, you're fine. No, I don't think so. I have all kinds of things marked in my book that I'm like, oh, I need to go back and look at this and incorporate some of these principles into my. So I have some, you know, thingies.
Look at it. That's funny. Me too. I have a ton.
My daughter needed these little post-it thingies for a project she did this last weekend, my 5th grader. So my husband's like, here, have the rest. And he gave me this package. I'm like, ooh, these are fancy. So I only used them this week.
Yeah.
But I have all these spots in my book that I have in the margin that are starred. Like, I need to come back to this part for sure.
I
like to go back through and put these there so I can find them easier. And
I know I don't have those nifty ones, so I just like I've been using just a whole this is a regular size Post-it, and then I just cut a slice off of it every time I need to mark something. I should get those handy dandy ones. I like the ones that go down to a point, so you can like point and mark a specific line. Those ones are really cool.
Yeah.
All right. Well, if I could probably stop the broadcast if there wasn't anything else.
Well, I think we're good.